all we need is just a little perspective. You're listening to Point of View, where crucial questions about critical issues are answered from a biblical worldview. And now, here's your host, Josh Barnes.
And that's right, you're listening to Point of View. This is Josh Barnes, and what a week this has been. Now, I told you it was a surprise that this was a crazy week, right? I mean, it shouldn't be if you've been listening to Point of View, because this I told you last week. I said this is going to be the most important week of 2020. Was the first week of 2021. And it didn't disappoint. As a matter of fact, it was far more interesting than I expected, and I was there to witness it. So I'm going to share with you what I witnessed. I was at the Capitol. I was on the steps of the Capitol building. I was there videoing, taking pictures, reporting, letting everybody know what exactly went on at the Capitol. I witnessed it. So I'm gonna clue you in on what actually happened, because almost everything you're hearing has maybe some truth and a bunch of error and a bunch of lies. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I saw, what I witnessed, and you really have to, this is tough, because I didn't realize how much misinformation is out there until I was there for one of these events, and I saw how much there's so many lies that are being told about this event, and it is just incredible to actually be present for something so momentous like this, and then to watch the news reports of it later and say, that's not what I saw. That didn't actually happen. And this is where we are. So this is Point of View, of course. For those of you who are listening for the very first time, this is where we are unashamed to look at politics and news from a biblical point of view, from a Christian worldview. That's what we're all about here. Of course, we operate under 4 basic assumptions. Let's walk through them real quick. Number 1, that is everyone has a worldview, and everyone who has a worldview, their opinions and their positions on issues are all shaped by that worldview. So everyone has a worldview. It's not strange that we look at the world from a biblical worldview. Atheists look at the world from an atheist worldview, right? Everyone has a worldview through which they view the world. This is normal, okay? The question really is, since we're making so many assumptions on this, and since this is the view that's this is the thing that is causing us to have the view that we're having, to view the world the way we do. We think a certain way about issues because of our worldview, because of how we're viewing them. Where our starting point, our foundational point. It's so important that we know which one is right, because they're not all right. Okay, you can't have atheism and biblical Christianity both being correct. You can't just say, oh, everybody's right. You know, if I'm making an assumption that there is absolute morality, and that abortion is wrong because there's absolute morality, and there is such a thing as murder being wrong, all this stuff, taking a life is sacred, all this. If I'm making that assumption on the basis of God existing, then someone who doesn't believe that God exists doesn't have that basis, and therefore is going to make different assumptions, and therefore is going to come to different conclusions. So we know that worldviews exist, they matter, and they aren't all right. One of them's right, the rest have to be wrong then. They're mutually exclusive. And since that is the case, we need to find out which one's right. Well, since Jesus Christ rose from the dead, we have actual historical documented evidence, over 500 eyewitnesses who saw Jesus alive after his death. We could then say with very, very much confidence that Jesus, in fact, did rise from the dead, which proves the Bible to be true, which means that the biblical worldview is the right one. And that means, that takes us to point number 4, if you want to be right about issues, you're going to have to be biblical about them. So we're here to help you be right about issues. And to do that, we're going to have to be biblical. And really, when we're looking at this, we're going to take this and we're going to apply this to what happened this week. And that is chiefly, on my mind, the Capitol protest. Now, there's probably a lot of our listeners who've been in the military. You've been in war. You've seen traumatic things. I have to say, I've seen some crazy things in my life, but nothing ever comes close to what I saw at the Capitol. Now, if I had been in the military, if I had been in action in war, I'm sure that this would not be anything close to that. So I don't want to say that this is the most traumatic thing that anyone can ever witness. But this was an incredible experience. Let me break it down to you, and I'll explain why I was there, what the events were involved there. Because Juan Goud, our producer, had gotten a request to live stream a rally from the Capitol on January 6th. That was on Wednesday. And he asked me to come to help him live stream that rally and to report on it. So I flew into Washington on Tuesday night, got there and drove to the hotel, spent the night there at the hotel. On Wednesday morning, about 7 o'clock, we left the hotel, and we marched down. Our hotel was about just a little north of the White House. So we marched down past the White House to right around the Washington Monument area, and then turned down Pennsylvania Avenue and walked up the mall towards the Capitol building. We actually stopped right there and did a little live stream on Right America. For those of you who saw that, that's where we stopped, right there, pretty close to the Washington Monument, but right there in the National Mall as we were headed back towards the Capitol. Because at that time, everyone was flooding towards President Trump's address. This is the interesting thing, because originally President Trump was not going to speak. Originally, and for weeks this has been planned, this was going to be a grassroots rally that just sort of spontaneously. There were actually, I think, 4 different rallies. Juan is confirming that. 4 different rallies that were planned for Wednesday. And then when President Trump heard about it, he decided he was going to come out and speak to the crowd. And this is when all of the other plans sort of started falling apart, because everyone was going to see President Trump speak at 11. So what we did is we continued on. So we knew everyone else was going to be covering the speech. We continued on to the rally we were supposed to cover at the Capitol. It was actually across the street and behind a office building from the Capitol. Not really even a block away, but it was on the north side of the Capitol, between the Capitol and Union Station, if you're familiar with Washington, D.C. at all. And so here we are. We're filming this rally. We started off with the frontline doctors speaking at the rally, and then it was Latinos for Trump. And then around 11 o'clock, they allowed people to come up on the platform and just speak as we were waiting for President Trump to speak. And once Trump was going to speak, they were going to stream that to these people gathered here in this park up by the Capitol. So we're there. Trump's address comes on, and this is something interesting, because I had been going back and forth when we had to use the restroom or we needed to get something to eat. We would go back to Union Station. From the direction of Union Station, near the end of Trump's speech, there was a group of people who showed up at the rally that we were at, which is about not even a block from the Capitol, just across the street and behind a building. And these people didn't look like Trump supporters to me. The first thing, I immediately looked at one and I said, who are these people? And I pointed them out. And we concluded after a little while that they must have been the Proud Boys. Now, there was no way to know for sure. I have no way to confirm that to you, okay? All I can tell you is that we're at a Trump rally. You don't usually see anybody wearing a mask. Okay, you just don't. And you usually see families. You usually see moms. You usually see dads. You see grandpas, grandmas. These are the type of people you usually see at a Trump rally. These were different. This was the first one I spotted was a tall man dressed with colorful. It wasn't black. It wasn't like Antifa, but he had an actual bulletproof vest on. Around his neck, he had a gas mask hanging around his neck, goggles. He had one of those hard hats, like a military hat that was hard, not like a baseball cap. You understand what I'm saying? Like a hard hat on. And he was decked out, like he was prepared for something. And this I thought was strange. Now, on the other hand, I thought, well, maybe they're just think that they're going to end up facing Antifa later, because this is what happened in the last rally. The last time there was a rally down in D.C., that night after the rally, Antifa came out, and the Proud Boys actually went out and fought with Antifa. So I thought maybe they are the Proud Boys. Maybe they're dressed up because they're planning to fight Antifa. Fast forward to today, we're getting actual reports that the FBI actually called and sent a memo to Washington saying they had credible reason to think that some people were planning violence on that day. So knowing that now and looking back at what I saw and what was suspicious to me at the time, I think it's pretty obvious that when I was standing there and I saw this group come in, and I noticed they all kind of, right around the end of Trump's speech, they all sort of looked at each other, looked at their watches, got together, and then marched off and saying that I couldn't hear what they said, okay, but it looked like they were saying something like, okay, it's time, we got to go. We have a schedule to keep. That sort of that was the attitude with which they left, and that was peculiar to me. I was also shared video from other people who were with Right America that were actually at the rally, who videoed other people dressed the same way at the rally that was marching back to. So all I'm saying is that we had these people who were very different from the rest of the crowd that showed up, and I witnessed it. I was there. I'm not making this stuff up. This is what I saw. Juan can verify it. I looked at him and I said, who are these people? Well, a little bit later, right after Trump's speech got finished, we were filming more of the rally where we were. Everyone was supposed to march from Trump's speech to the Capitol. This is where everyone was supposed to. This is where the rally was supposed to be anyway. The only reason they were down at Trump's speech is because Trump had inserted himself into the rallies that we had already planned, right? So what I'm saying is Trump did not call these people to Washington, and he did not decide that they were going to march to the Capitol after his speech. In his speech, they keep playing the part from his speech where he says, "You're gonna go from here and march to the Capitol." He was saying that because that's what they were already planning to do. He was interrupting what we had already planned, and that was they were supposed to already be at the Capitol at a rally that we were live streaming, and other rallies around the Capitol that others were going to be at. So the idea that Trump had any sort of instigating power here is completely insane. Plus the fact that the FBI has already admitted. The FBI is being reported that they called ahead of time and said, "Look, we have people planning violence," which means, what does that mean? If people were premeditating violence at the Capitol, guess who's not responsible for the violence? That's right, Donald Trump. That would be Donald Trump. He would not be responsible. I'm just saying. I'm just giving you honest truth. This is what I saw, okay? So I get a text message. Well, I'm sorry. Juan gets a text message from some of the other people in our group saying the Proud Boys have pushed over a barrier, and they've actually, I heard it this way, that they jumped a barrier. Apparently, what really happened is they started pushing at the barrier. There were only about from the video that I saw. I wasn't there for the first pushing over the barrier. But there were only about 4 or 5 police right there, and this was on the west lawn of the Capitol. They pushed over the barrier, and they just started being swarmed there at the police officers because people were just walking into the west lawn of the Capitol. And so the police actually removed those barriers. What I did, I got the text. We got the text message saying that they jumped a barrier, and then got another message saying that everyone's across the barrier. And we thought, oh man, we gotta find out what's going on here. So I grabbed the camera. Juan stayed to live stream there at that rally. I grabbed the camera and I walked around the building that we were behind to the north end. I'm sorry, to the east end of the Capitol. The east side of the Capitol was peaceful. There was nothing going on at the time. I looked up at the Capitol. There was no one on the Capitol steps. There was police, actually a large police presence, and more police officers were arriving every minute there on the east side of the Capitol. Also, on the east side of the Capitol, I saw a cordoned off area where the press were supposed to be. I only saw, I think, maybe 3 or 4 people in that area, maybe 2 press organizations. Again, I don't know where the other ones were, but most of the pictures and the reporting that you saw was all from the east side. I knew something was going on, so I didn't want to stay on the east side. It looked like nothing was going on. I circled around to the north, along the street, and here I could actually see people on the lawn on the west side, and police officers actually greeting them, speaking to them kindly, and just protecting the Capitol. This was odd to me. So I continued down, and by the way, if you want to see videos of this, you can actually go to facebook.com/Right America Media Network, facebook.com/Right America Media Network. All of our pictures, I've got videos, pictures of all of this. But I circled around and came at it from the west side, and when I got there, all the western barriers had been removed. I mean, once these violent people pushed over the barrier, the police actually went and removed the barrier. Now, you can speculate as to why. I think probably because they were worried of a riot. They were worried that they would take the barriers and use them as battering rams, right? So, and that's a real concern, right? So by the time I get there, there is no one else. There's no one keeping you from going on, right? I walked in, and the police were allowing people in. All right, I didn't do anything illegal here. I mean, there was no barrier when I got there. So I walked in where all the other Trump supporters were standing, and we were now standing on the west lawn of the Capitol, with the Capitol right in front of us. And I could see up at the Capitol, at the steps of the Capitol, I could see tear gas. I could see grenades going, smoke grenades going off, and I could see smoke. I could see gas. I didn't know what was going on up there. At that point, I couldn't see who was up there, what was going on, but everyone around me was peaceful. They were just curious. Some of them thought, like, oh, maybe this is good. Like maybe something good is happening. Like I don't know. When we get a little closer, by the time I got a little closer, the police had actually backed up halfway up the stairs on the west lawn of the Capitol. And by the way, those of you who are watching the live stream online, just bear with us. We actually have a news crew from the Netherlands here that is filming. They interviewed me yesterday. They're filming here today, and so every now and then you'll see a camera guy walk in front of the camera. That's fine. Don't just pay no attention to the man behind the glass here. But anyway, so we were out there, and we were. Now I can see them, right? I can actually see the police holding off protesters halfway up the stairs. Now, if you know how the Capitol's set out, on the west side, you have the staircase is not very broad, and they also had a scaffolding up that was I believe part of a construction project for the inauguration. I'm not sure exactly how they set things up for the inauguration, but this is the west side is the side looking towards Pennsylvania Avenue, looking towards the National Mall, right? So this is the side where you would have the inauguration, and there's scaffolding set up on the stairs, so it really narrowed the stairs down. The stairs were not that wide here, and so this is where the police were holding them off. You saw some pepper spray, you saw some people who had been pushing the police, but I could see up there, and for the most part, actually, you saw a lot of friendly exchanges with the police. A lot of people were just standing there, actually talking with the police. I got some video of a man just talking to the police, and this was most of the day. And then you had moments when certain people got violent, but I could not tell at this point how many people were involved, but it was not a large number of people trying to be violent. Anyway, as I watched, the police were holding up people on halfway up the barricade, barricading people halfway up the steps. But on those stairs, people started climbing up in the scaffolding. And this scaffolding, I'm not sure what was inside of it, what was on the other side of it, but there was actually one scaffolding, which was all metal scaffolding, and the other one was actually a giant wooden box that was built there on the stairs, probably for the inauguration. And when they got in there, I think there may have been a door at the bottom of that actually went into the Capitol. I don't know. But I'm hearing reports that some people ended up getting into the Capitol by means of the scaffolding. Anyway, the police are holding people up on the stairs, but on the stairs, they're able to get on the scaffolding. So the police fall backwards to the door of the Capitol. And this is where this is the most of what I saw on the west side. I could not see the door of the west side from where I was. Got a lot of video of people walking around, texting, talking to each other, saying, what does this mean? What is going on? Lots of just general curiosity. I got video of on the West Lawn of a SWAT team marching through the crowd of people. Nobody molesting them, nobody giving them a hard time. You got a few people raising their fist and shouting. But I mean, you have to understand, there were hundreds of thousands, almost definitely over 1 million people. I've never seen that many people before in my life. I'm standing at the Capitol, and I got video turning around and looking down the National Mall, and it is chocked full of people. It is packed, completely filled, as far as the eye could see, with people who were nowhere near any of the violence, were nowhere near the Capitol, and probably had no idea what was actually going on at the Capitol, except for whatever they could get from news media. But I was the only media that I saw, at least at that point, on the west side. All the rest of the media was on the east side, and they were behind. They didn't get the word of what was going on, or didn't get the pictures and the video of it until later. Well, Juan showed up there, and we stayed there and filmed for quite some time, and then we decided it's time to pack it up. We got to get going. We got to hit our flight. This is probably getting close to 5 o'clock when we walked around to the north side, headed back towards our rally where we had left all of our equipment. Here, we were actually really close to the door, and there was a group of probably, I'm going to guess about 30. You probably could have maxed out around 50, but I'm thinking it was more around 30 people around that door that were just trying to force their way in. And this is where I got, I think, the best understanding of the violent people that were part of this. Because I'm telling you, I spent most of the day with people, even though I was right up at the Capitol, people that were completely peaceful, just 100% peaceful. And when are you going to try to stop me from telling the story? All right, here's Juan to censor me. Come on, Juan, censor me.
Well, I'm going to have to start talking because you know what? They need your microphone.
Is it not on? Oh, they need to take it off?
Yeah.
Okay.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to have to start talking. So
you know, the problem is I had to run this up inside my shirt. Do they want me to take my shirt off live on Facebook?
Oh, that's right. You're going to have to. I'm going to have to.
Our
put
ratings are going to be really good today. This
go.
is going to be great.
Or really bad.
Really bad.
People are going to start shutting off right now. So
I'm not sure if you guys want this back after it's been up in there.
Yeah. So what part of the story were you at?
We're just getting to the north door.
Oh, okay. So
this is when.
Okay.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. This is when I witnessed. I was going to joke about witnessing you going inside and stealing at some, but you would get you arrested.
Nowadays, you don't want to do that.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Did not happen.
That's
no,
right.
Juan and I were there purely for journalistic reasons, and I have to be careful what I joke about right now, because the witch hunt is out. But you know, here's what we saw at the north door. This is where it got hairy for us, because it was really interesting up until this point, but we were actually able to walk right up on the terrace, right up to the door, and there was a group of about 30 men surrounding this SWAT team that was guarding the door, and they were yelling. You had people yelling things like treason, bring them all out and hang them. It was crazy. It shook me up. It definitely shook me up a little bit. And let me just say that though this was instigated, as I mentioned before, by these people that were very prepared and had planned this, Now, you can try to say that's Antifa. I know that there was one Antifa guy who admitted that he was in there, so we know that there was at least one Antifa inside of the Capitol. He admitted so, right? I'm not making this up. Like, he's actually admitted I was there, but he says he was there for journalistic reasons, which I don't believe, by the way. But even if he was, we know there's one. I'm just saying, even if it's not Antifa and these were the Proud Boys, you did have. And by the way, for those who don't know, the Proud Boys are an anarchist group. They are supporters of Trump, though. So you can't say they're not Trump supporters. They're just not like us, right? They're not the Trump supporters like everyone else, right? And I guess I would count myself. I don't count myself a Trumpist, or a MAGA guy. But I support Trump. I voted for him. I wanted him to win. I wish there was still a path for him to win, but I don't see that.
So the Proud Boys are anarchists?
Well, yes. Well, there's a lot of them who are.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of intuitive, though. If they're supporting a candidate, how can they be?
Well, okay. I guess they're not they're more insurrectionists, right? They are perfectly fine with starting a civil war, and they think that will help our cause and help our country. Maybe anarchist isn't the right word. But this is the sentiment among the Proud Boys. But anyway, either way, you had these people who definitely instigated this. But I'm just going to be very, very frank. There were Trump supporters who were just understandably angry, who got caught up in this, and just like caught up in the moment, like, we've got to do something. Let's do this, right? And to them, I say that was misguided, that was foolish, and you know what? Shame on you. If those should be arrested. Those who threw punches, those who damaged property. This I believe was unacceptable. But we were there at the door, and I can tell you, there's this yelling, this whole build up, this whole shouting, and then finally they started pushing. Right, they started pushing the SWAT team, trying to push them inside and get inside the door. And you saw the pepper spray. You saw cans and rocks being thrown. You saw the batons come out by the SWAT team, beating people down. You saw people being pulled out, just like some of them bloodied, some of them got pepper spray in their eyes. They're getting their eyes washed out. And these people were able to actually push the SWAT team back inside the door of the Capitol. They tried to push them further, but once they pushed them back into the Capitol, the SWAT team used tear gas and gassed the people at the door, and then those people at the door went running. As soon as that push, though, happened, you actually saw this amazing dynamic. And this is something that so Juan was trying to get a video of what was going on. I was standing back because I have contacts. I don't have extra contacts with me. And if I got tear gassed or pepper sprayed,
It was pepper spray.
yeah, I couldn't wash out my eye. I mean, like I wouldn't be able to see anymore. So I was standing back, but here's the problem. Juan had my cell phone in his backpack. So if I got separated from Juan, I couldn't get a hold of him. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I'm standing back. I'm keeping a close eye on Juan just to make sure that he's okay. And he's doing the real investigative reporting, out there with the camera. But it was interesting to see as you're standing back, because when these 30 or so guys started pushing to try to force their way in, everyone else took a step back. And there was this whole, whoa, I'm staying over here. You guys do what you're going to do, but I'm staying over here. And you saw people turn around and walk the other direction, because that's not what they were there for. And while there were actual Trump supporters who got caught up in this, I can tell you, without a doubt, I witnessed that this was instigated by people who had premeditated and planned it, not by Donald Trump. And I can tell you that without a doubt, the incredible vast amount of Trump supporters there, the hundreds of thousands, never even witnessed the violence, let alone participated in it. And those who actually witnessed the violence, the majority of them did not participate. The vast majority. I'm talking about this entire terrace of the Capitol is packed with people, and 30 of them try to push their way through the door. Now, I don't know what's happening at the other doors. Maybe you have another 30. Let's say there's 50 people on each side of the Capitol. That would give you 200 people all the way around. Then you've got maybe about 50 to 60 people made it inside. So you might have had 250. Let's just throw it all in. Let's just say there was 300 people trying to cause violence. That's a tiny number. Now, all of those people need to be arrested, they need to be taken to jail, all that stuff. But the idea that you can then try to completely shut down the president over this is absolutely insane. And with that, I bring in Justin Barnes, who's been waiting patiently to give his input here on this. And let me make sure I've got him on. Bring to back. There we go. Okay, there. Justin, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
That sounds very excited.
I just love his enthusiasm.
Well, I'm still getting over Corona, so that's my excuse.
Justin tested positive, actually. Yep. So he's got excuse. Can you taste, Justin?
Yes, thank God I didn't lose that, because that would have been torture. I love food too much to lose my sense of taste. I think that was actually just I willed myself to keeping my taste.
But I wouldn't mind losing my sense of smell. That'd actually be a positive thing, I think.
If I had to live around you, I agree.
Yeah. Touche. Justin, tell us what it felt like from the other side, because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm wondering what it felt like for people who were just getting this news from their living room. Like what were the reports what's the first reports that you heard about this whole Capitol thing?
So I purposefully tried to stay sort of out of the news the past couple of weeks, but there's only so much that you're going to do. If you have Facebook or anything like that, you're going to see. Suddenly I start seeing a just massive pouring of posts on Facebook about violence at the Capitol, about people breaking into the building, and suddenly I see all my Christian ministry friends are coming out and strongly condemning everything. I start seeing Donald Trump being blamed, and at first it did seem, from the reports I was seeing, it seemed like people were saying that there was tons of people that got violent. That was the impression I got. I'm not going to say that any reports specifically said that, but the impression that I got was that there was hundreds of, almost like the Black Lives Matter riots over the summer, like people just started burning crap to the ground. That was sort of the impression I got. I don't think that really lasted the night, that impression, but that was the initial sort of portrayal that I saw.
Yeah, and here's the difference, and I told this to Juan. Juan, by the way, Juan's sitting here. If I'm lying about any of this stuff, I mean, I just want everybody to know I'm not making this up, am I?
No, you're not. But did we put that disclaimer out?
What disclaimer?
Yeah, we have to put the standard disclaimer about. Let's see, what is it? I gotta read it just to make sure we don't get in trouble. We do not like what the violence, so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, I've already said that. I've already said
okay.
that those who there were Trump supporters who got caught up in this, and while their anger was understandable,
So,
right?
We condemn the violence that occurred and breaking into the Capitol, absolutely unequivocally. I condemn it in exactly the same way I condemn Antifa and BLM violence for months.
Exactly.
After the death of George Floyd. So,
and that's a good point. And the double standard, we're definitely going to have to talk about here in a minute. But
we will. I'm going to make sure we have to get to that.
We got to talk about the double standard.
Everything that you had said is spot on. Did you mention about the when we were in the Freedom Rally? About the weird people that were there, that was just before.
Did you know that it's being reported by, I think by NBC, that the FBI actually sent a notice to DC saying they had credible reason to suspect that multiple people were planning violence on Wednesday. Did you know that?
No.
They had already sent that. So this was premeditated.
Yeah.
And we witnessed it.
So exactly. I mean, we saw. If you pointed it out to me, and it was people that did not fit the typical Trump supporter on a rally, and they're definitely looking around. You definitely could see that they were. It was like scouts. To be honest, it was like scouts. To use a military term, they were like the advance party, making sure that what they planned was going to work, or make a judgment to their plan. I don't think I don't think where we were was part of their plan. After they saw that there was not that many people there, because as you mentioned before, the president thing was thrown into in the middle of the previous week. The rallies were about 3 or 4 weeks before. They were all planned to have rallies with different platforms where people can come and, guests could come and talk and all that kind of stuff, or give their speech. We expected where we were at, that park was going to be full. And when we got there was nobody except for the speakers.
And it was really, they were acting suspicious.
Yes.
It was, when I looked at the man, I saw him. He looked back at me, and you could see that it bothered him that I saw him.
Yes.
And he glanced at me several times. I would look over, and I would catch him glancing at me to see if I was looking at him. It was that weird, that weird, like, two people are watching each other sort of a thing.
Exactly.
And I'm like, that's weird. This is just weird, right? None of this fits, and I thought, this is strange. Of course, I just dismissed it, thinking, well, I'm probably thinking too much about it. But man, after that happened, I knew exactly what had happened.
I think that was part of the plan. If the rallies were full of people, like they were supposed to be, I think the rallies were the original target of this thing, because an organization like Antifa, whoever did it, let's just say Organization X, right? We know who sent people out there, Antifa and BLM, all that kind of stuff. They want, it looked like the scouts are ready to, yes, we can execute Plan A at this point. And I'm taking a guess with my military experience is that if Trump would have not done the speech and all the rallies at the same time around the Capitol, we would have had, thousands of people around us. Yeah. The problem was going to be there.
Well, here's another thing. They were dressed like the Proud Boys, but one of them was a girl. Yeah. I distinctly remember that, which was odd to me, because I know the Proud Boys are very, they aren't a feminist group. We'll just say that, right?
No. So, but I think actually they don't. I'm on their website right now. Just because it says Proud Boys, I believe that they also have they do include women.
So let me tell you why I condemn the violence, because there are people who literally think the country's over, and why not just be violent at this point? I mean, we're headed for civil war, or else the country's gone, right? Why not just start the civil war? And this was the sentiment of some of the people who joined with this violence. I'm not kidding you. They felt like they were patriots, and they were starting a new revolution, and this was the beginning. Now, I'm thinking, when I hear people talk like this at that thing, I'm thinking, you're insane. If you want to start a revolution, you're going to need a gun, okay? Yeah. This is not going to work.
Josh, I think you just hit, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm looking at the Proud Boys website. It's, if you are a man and you know that the West is the best, you can join. So you are correct. Yeah, it's supposed to be man only, and you just pointed out an excellent point there. There were women. There was a woman in there, and I remember that. Yes. Yeah.
And I've never seen women in the Proud Boys before.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
So I'm not trying to read between the lines. I'm just trying to give you the lines and let you read between them if you want to. I'm just saying this is what I saw, and you make of it what you want to make of it. Here's why, as Christians, we don't think that this violence was condoned. And let me back up, because there was a vast majority of people who agreed with that statement that I just made. The vast majority of Trump supporters would agree with that. And I know that we've already had some comments online for this show that say, I've heard enough, I don't want to hear anymore, we need to fight, whatever. Listen to what John Adams said. I'm going to read this, and I'm going to read this like every show. This is like the point of view quote. Okay, this is John Adams in his letter to the Massachusetts militia in October 11th, 1798. He said this. He said, because we have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion, avarice, ambition, revenge, or gallantry would break the strongest cords of our Constitution, as a whale goes through a net. The Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. What you saw at the Capitol was the division between the moral and religious people and those who want to accomplish their end by any means. There is a difference, and this is what sets us apart. I'm sorry, there are lines I won't cross, and that's what makes America great. People who won't cross the lines. I understand the other side has crossed the lines, but when we all cross the lines, there's no country left. We have to start again at that point, because this country was only meant for people who won't cross the line. That's why we have to put people who cross the line in prison, right? The Constitution of this country was designed on purpose for a people who were moral and religious. And the founders themselves, John Adams, said, it's not going to work if you don't have that compass. This is why Point of View is so important, by the way. People think that Point of View is just one of those weird shows. I know most people don't, but there's a few people in the whole world who hear Point of View and say, oh, it's one of those weirdo shows where they try to do religion and all that. No. Like this is the thing, right? This is why it matters. Juan, it seems like you want to say something there. You're live on the air.
I know I am. Well, I do understand what you're saying. I understand what Sam and Adam said, but we are down 200 and some years down the road, and our society definitely has changed. When
it's a wonder it's lasted this long.
Yes, it is. So, and you said it. The other side has crossed the line, but we won't cross that a line. But when your survival is at stake at this point, I mean, what?
Where is the line?
Where's the line? I mean, exactly.
When do you start fighting? Justin, you want to weigh in on this? And we've been kind of steamrolling over you so far.
Well, boy, there's a lot to say. The fact of the matter is, Christian principles are always Christian principles. That's one of the great things about being a Christian is if you know the principles you're supposed to live by, they don't change.
Right.
So if we're not supposed to be the aggressor in fight, we're supposed to fight for self-defense, that sort of thing, and pray that God will grant us mercy and repentance for our country to repent and turn back to Him. We know that the heart of the king is in the hand of the Lord. Then revolution is not the thing we jump to as Christians.
Right.
So which is why I say for Christians, our principles, we don't start revolution when Donald Trump's president. We don't start revolution when Joe Biden's president. This is not how Christians operate because the principles are universal and don't change just because our circumstance has.
Yeah. And this is what I said to Juan, because we had some really deep conversations walking all the way back to our hotel. By the way, I still have blisters on my feet from carrying those giant bags. And
cry me a river, young buck.
And then running to get to the to the airplane before it took off.
And this was your first rally, right? How many have I covered with the 2 bags? And you're complaining?
Whatever. No, but we had these conversations. One of the things I said is there are lines that I won't cross, and I don't think, And I told them, I said, what are those lines? I said the line is punching a police officer or causing damage to property that's not mine. This is a line I won't cross. Why? Because these are biblical principles. Now, if a police officer, on the other hand, if a police officer is defending a Capitol building, yeah, I'm not going to punch that police officer.
I agree with you 1,000%.
Now, if the police officer is breaking into my home to take my children away from me, okay, yeah, now I'm going to, in self-defense, right? Now there's a self-defense issue here.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'll probably go down, but I'll go down fighting.
Yes.
But there's a line, right? And the line is I'm not going to be the aggressor in a violent situation.
Oh, no, and I understand that one. I understand also that the Christian principles don't change, but the situations have changed. So, and right there on that good example you just gave there, your situation changed. The situation changed. Your principle didn't change, but the situation changed. So you have to adjust to it. Is that correct?
Well, no, I don't think the Christian principle has always been that self-defense is permitted. This has been always encouraged by God.
Okay, so self-defense. So I could say that this is self-defense for me, right?
Well, there's a difference between saying it's self-defense and it actually being self-defense.
Well, yes, but you know what? We're all different, and we think we have our own points of view. Every Monday,
but not all of them are correct. If I remember, there's a premise that a show has that not all points of view are right.
You are correct.
That's
but
the point.
And again, I am not advocating to let's take the guns and take the hill.
No, you're asking the tough question.
Yes.
Because we're looking at, if you don't mind me articulating what I think you're trying to get at,
go ahead.
Because we're looking at a country that,
in other words, you want to say it in English.
Well, yeah, I want to say it in English. I'm just going to translate. We're looking at a country where we're concerned. There's real concern that there may not be another free and fair election again in this country. There's real concern about that. Okay, Now we have probably listeners who disagree with that, but there is real reason to think that may be the case.
Correct.
And that, because our government is completely unwilling to look into that and satisfy our concerns, you're saying, at what point do we say enough is enough and there has to be something we can do, even if it means a physical confrontation?
Correct.
And I would say when it becomes a self-defense issue. So when that government sends men to your house to take your children, to take your property, that's where you say no.
At that point, it's too late.
Not necessarily. It really just depends. And the reason that the American government, the American Revolution worked was because the Americans had their own established government, their chartered town governments that stood together. And it was not a person versus the government. It was a government versus another government. It was the governments of the colonies versus the government of Great Britain. And if a human being, or even if MAGA decides we're going to just fight the government, it's not going to work.
Well,
but if a state government says we've had enough, we're seceding, that's where something like that is possible.
Yes and no, and maybe my history is not that great, but you got to understand that only a third of the population, and at that time, actually agree with the revolution, which means 2/3, 1/3 didn't want to do anything, and the other thirds were loyalists.
They were loyalists,
and those loyalists were part of the government. So in reality, they had to.
A few of them were, but no, the people voted. I mean, this was something that there were loyalists that were part of the part of the conventions here that got together and voted to ratify to accept the Declaration of Independence and to ratify the Constitution later. All those things. These are things that these states and towns actually got together, and their leadership decided, okay, we're going to do this. So this was a government-led fight. You don't have individuals coming together and beating the government. You just don't. And based on Christian principles, that's never okay. Christians are told that when worse comes to worse, you die rather than disobey the government, unless the government's. You die if the government's telling you to do something contrary to Scripture. You don't do it, and you obey if the government's telling you to do something that is you can get along with. You can obey the Bible and also obey that thing. Here's where the Christian can fight when their government rises up against another government. This is why the revolution worked, because the Christians in the colonies, their colonies rose up against Great Britain. So the Christians could then fight because their government was now against this other government.
Okay, so in using that, then I'm going to run for Londonderry, the town of Londonderry, be one of the selectmen, and then I as a town can rise against the other governments. Is that what you're saying?
No, well, yeah. If all the people in Londonderry vote on it, but I think that would be kind of foolhardy by yourself.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's
This is, by the way, the conversation that the founding fathers had, because they had these real concerns. They had a group of people who wanted to be violent, who threw a bunch of tea into the Boston Harbor that they condemned in the strongest possible terms. In the same way that they had condemned the Boston riots, where the British had shot one of the rioters. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are the same type of situations that they were dealing with in the 1700s.
Similar, but in different scale. You're correct.
Well, there's a riot, and somebody on the British side actually shoots some of the people that were rioting. Yeah. And then they never get. Yeah. They never go to court over it. I mean, these were the same thing. This is exactly, by the way, what happened in the Capitol. There's a riot. Somebody gets shot. No, they're not going to be tried for it. There's not going to be any investigation.
Well, I know we're going to go on a break real quick here, and I want to ask a question to Justin so he can get something.
Okay, quickly, because I got to announce who we got at the top of the hour.
Okay, so real quick. So the question is, if we're not supposed to rise up individually, why were we given that right, the Second Right Amendment, for us as individuals to have guns?
30 seconds, Justin.
Yeah, this would take a lot longer to unpack, but I think the easiest answer to your question, though I think there's several answers to the question, but the easiest one is I don't think that everything that is American is also biblical.
Okay, we'll have to leave. We're definitely coming back to this. Top of the hour, we have Troy Anderson. He wrote a new book called The Military Guide to Armageddon, and I can say one thing, that this book is timely. It is creepy. This type of stuff that's talked about in this book about Christians being ready for dark times coming, because I think when he wrote the book, he had no idea how dark the times
the book is not creepy. It's just the timing.
It's creepy, the timing. Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Creepy, the timing. But we'll be talking to him. Top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you in about 6 minutes.
It simply means that something is awesome.
In a world of darkness, we search for light. In confusion, we seek for answers. But sometimes, to find what we're looking for, all we need is just a little perspective. You're listening to Point of View, where crucial questions about critical issues are answered from a biblical worldview. And now, here's your host, Josh Barnes.
Crucial questions about critical issues. I can't think of anything more critical or more crucial than the questions and the issues that we've been dealing with on the show today. And of course, we've had this motto that we're making your 2021 better one Monday at a time, the same way as we did in 2020. We're making your 2020 better one Monday at a time. But 2021's tough. I keep telling people, look, 2020 started out great and ended terrible. Maybe 2021 starts out terrible and ends great. You know, maybe that's how it works. But here's the problem. Here's the bottom line. This is what we've been really dealing with for the first hour, in case you missed it. And I shared my story, what I witnessed at the Capitol. I was there. I saw violence taking place. I was not inside of the Capitol building, but I was at the doors. I did see people trying to force their way in. I witnessed all of that. And I shared what I'm looking at. And we had this conversation about violence, about the American Revolution. That was violent, right? At what point is violence okay? But the reason that we're having this conversation is because there is a general sense that America's gone, right? I'm not sure if I should say that America is dead, but I would say that maybe if America is a person, I might look at America kind of like someone who has dementia, right? I would say, yeah, they're still alive, but they don't know who they are anymore, and I don't recognize them anymore. They're not the same. I suppose I could say that about America. America's not dead yet, but they don't know who they are anymore, and they're not the same, and I don't expect they ever will be. And I feel like this is the general sense that we have about America, and this led some to misguided actions on Wednesday. Misguided, I think, is the kind way to say it. But this came from a sense of desperation. I have on the line here Mr. Troy Anderson, who is the co-author of the book, The Military Guide to Armageddon, that I've got right here. You can see it on the live stream if you're watching it. The Military Guide to Armageddon. And I think he's got some answers for us, because Troy, are you there? Can you hear me? But I guess I should check and make sure you're on the line.
Yeah, Josh.
Perfect.
Great to be on your show.
Good to have you, Mr. Anderson, Troy. Whatever you'd like me to call you. I really love what I've read of this book. Now, I'll have to be very honest. I appreciate you guys sending me the book, but the last couple of weeks have been so busy. I got a good portion through, and I tell you what, there's a lot of things that can be said about books that that are promoted here on the show. Sometimes it's just so many different things. I think that the best way to describe this book, if I were to put it in one word, would be timely. I mean, the release of this book seems eerily perfect in its timing, because this just came out last week, correct?
Yeah, it came out on Tuesday, became a #1 bestseller. The most interesting thing about this is my co-author, retired U.S. Army Chaplain and Colonel David Giammona, he got a hold of me out of the blue in early 2018. At that point, the book was called The Making of a Warrior, and he was trying to figure out how to get it published and edited, and ready for a publisher to take it to print. And it struck me when he called me, because I'd written some books, investigative books on Bible prophecy and globalism and all these different things happening, that if America would listen to anybody about the dangers we're facing, they'd listen to an Army chaplain and colonel. And he actually told me in, sort of mid-2018 that, supposedly God had told him that by the time this book came out, it would be a completely different world. And at that point, we didn't know anything about the COVID-19 pandemic, the loss of freedoms, and all this chaos that's ensued in recent weeks. So it's, just rather stunning to watch this whole thing. And the book came out, last Tuesday, the day before the chaos at the Capitol.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to read just an excerpt here from the preface of the book. It says, "I am persuaded that things on this planet are about to change drastically, and that we need to prepare for coming earth-shattering events. this released the day before, I think, a drastic change in our country and earth-shattering events. That's pretty creepy. How well timed this was. I just think here's the thing that struck me as I read through the book, because the book is called The Military Guide to Armageddon. It's designed to give Christians this emphasis about being prepared for difficult times that are ahead, right? I think, and I love how you've delicately handled and sort of made a minor issue out of the things where Christians would disagree, right? You dealt with the issue of the pre-tribulation rapture or the post-tribulation rapture, I think, very well, and sort of made that a minor issue in the book. You've made the book more about, hey, no matter where you stand on this, tough times are ahead, and are Christians ready for it? Am I right to make that assumption?
Yeah, I mean, the thinking behind that was we don't know. Nobody knows for sure exactly how this is all going to unfold. I mean, there's like when I was a kid, I read Hal Lindsey's book, The Late Great Planet Earth, and that got me interested in Bible prophecy. But nobody knows for sure how this is going to unfold. So rather than delving into the controversies of pre-trib or post-trib or mid-trib, I mean, obviously we're now seeing serious dangers, threats to our freedoms, loss of religious liberties. Who knows what's coming next year? So it's just wise and prudent. The Bible Proverbs says the wise man prepares for danger and gets ready for it. And so that's our message to believers, to people of faith, and just to people in general, is that we need to get ready. And a lot of this involves getting right with God, spiritual preparation, putting on the armor of God, all the different things that the Bible talks about.
Yeah, and what struck me was, and I'll tell you, the battle as I was reading through the book, and you can tell that the book was written from a charismatic perspective. I'm come from a Baptist perspective, and our listeners are from who knows? There's so many different listeners from different perspectives. So I read it with a bit of discernment, not agreeing with everything that's written, but I think the general tone is really what I was trying to understand as I was reading the book. And at first, I was approaching the book wondering exactly where you were going with it, right? So I understand that you're talking about difficult times and Christians being prepared for it. But I noticed that all of the preparation seemed to be spiritual. And I'm thinking here of physical difficulties, and I'm thinking, how come there's no preparation for the physical things? And I realized by the place that I'm at in the book, which is most of the way through, I'm realizing that this book is really meant to make this ultimate point. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the meaning of this book is ultimately the preparation for both the spiritual trials that are ahead and the physical trials, whether there be really, really dark days of persecution in America around the corner very soon, which some of us are convinced probably is coming very soon, whether there be civil war or just crazy things that are real concerns now that really have never been real concerns before. The answer to physical and spiritual is all found in spiritual preparation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the central message of the book. If you read the Bible is sort of a book of miracles. God, the Bible says God intervenes in human affairs if we pray to Him, essentially. And so throughout the Bible, there's all these different essential heroes who are just regular people that God used in extraordinary ways. And so there's many verses in the Bible that talk about, as we move into this period of time, if in fact this really is the end times, that it's going to be critically important to rely on God, the power of prayer, the power of God, and all the different like the Bible talks about putting on the full armor of God, the sword of the Spirit, the breastplate of righteousness, the helmet of salvation, and these are like weapons of our spiritual warfare to help us be victorious and to go through whatever kind of troubles and trials and persecutions we may go through. And so in a way, the book's designed to help you walk in the supernatural power, protection, and provision of the Holy Spirit. But we do have a chapter at the end. You haven't got there yet. It's called Prepping for the End Times. And it's actually the Colonel's takes what he learned in the military and translates that into these are the different things you need for physical preparations to get ready for any kind of disaster that we may face.
Wow. Okay. So now you've given me that hook. I've got to finish it now. Well done, sir. No. So here's my question for you. How do you think? And I've got, if those who are watching on the live stream, you can see all these little tabs sticking out. I've got so many places marked I wanted to read to you and ask you about. I won't be able to get to even half of them. But what do you think about this? What we're facing now? So. What happened last week was we found out we are definitely going to have a Democrat-controlled Congress, a Democrat-controlled House. We're going to have a Democrat-controlled presidency. We have Democrats calling for the complete censorship of people on the right. We have Democrats calling for the complete purge in some cases. They're actually calling for the purge of anyone who supported the president. We have real cause for real concern and real tribulation and real persecution coming down the pike. What do you think is in the future for America, and how do you think this book plays into that?
Well, I've been a journalist for 3 decades. I used to be a reporter at the LA Daily News for many years, and I've never seen a time in my life where this kind of threat to our First Amendment freedoms, our religious freedoms, all these freedoms we've enjoyed for centuries in America are in jeopardy like this. And these kind of, this over the top, calls of censorship and such. And so, only time will tell how this all pans out. Maybe people will cool down a bit here, but at this point, it doesn't look very good. And so I think that's part of the message of this book is we need to be bold and courageous. For too long, we've sort of had the country club church in America, and every Sunday you go to church and you sort of hear this nice sermon, makes you feel good, and you don't really, put anything to action in your life. And so we need to, Christians and Catholics and people of faith need to, stand up and have our voice heard as much as we can and oppose all these different things. We have a Constitution, we have a Declaration of Independence, we have the Bill of Rights, and these are all enshrined in our founding documents. And so we need to push back against, essentially, what's happening here. There's a push towards socialism, maybe even communism. It's a little unclear exactly what's happening with all the sort of asymmetrical warfare that's going on. But, it's very important, I think, to stand up, fight this, and then also, pray to God. God can, intervene many, many times in American history, and he may intervene again here.
Yeah.
So that'd be the message.
Now, clarify what you mean by that. I think I know what you mean, but we've had the discussion on the air in the first hour of the show today about what fight the Christian fights, right? I was present at the Capitol. Juan, our producer, was there. I saw this took place. Did not participate in any violence, but we had this discussion flying home from the Capitol. And we've had it on the air today for the first hour, and is there a call for Christians to fight at some point against their government, or are Christians to be passive and trust in God and be martyrs if so be it? And I'm on the side of, look, we don't take up arms, we don't fight, we aren't violent. But there is a question to that. Would you speak to that and exactly what you mean when you say it's time for us to fight?
Well, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. We're not calling for violence of any form or or nature there, but I mean, it's important for us to speak out, to vocally, via email or whatever, oppose these different things, these sort of infringements on our freedoms. That's why free speech is crucial to a democracy, and we still have the First Amendment, so that's very important. And then secondarily, that's the sort of message of the book is draw closer to God, employ the power of prayer, read the Bible, try to live a righteous life. The Bible said the prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Just a few years ago, my wife said, "Why don't you start keeping a journal of things that seem miraculous in our lives?" And so I started every time we pray, and it seemed like something, like this could be a miracle. I'd write it down. It's now like 150 pages
Wow.
of just phenomenal
Wow.
things that happened the last few years. I mean, just last week, I'm just a regular guy. The book shot up to number 129 among 30 million books on Amazon.
Wow.
And I was like, how did that happen? And so, God does intervene, and He does perform miracles. And so I think that's the central message of this book, is that, we need to draw closer to God during this time. We don't know exactly what's going to happen here, but that's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you one more question before you go, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. And I want to encourage people, whether you're no matter where you are on the spectrum of evangelical, right? I mean, I'm a Baptist. Whether you're charismatic or whatever angle you're looking at it. You may not agree with every word written in this book, but this book can be very, very helpful, and I've really enjoyed reading it, even though I'm not from the same stripe as Troy here. But Troy, I want to ask you, because one of the questions that we're really dealing with right now is this idea of censorship, and you kind of touched on it in your last statement. What do you think Christians can do? Because yeah, we need to fight with our words, but what do we do when they shut off our words? What do we do when they start to censor the things that we say? How do we handle that? How do we get the word out at that point?
I've seen a couple of different stories. It looks like Parler's filed a lawsuit,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was one of the congressmen mentioned some kind of like racketeering involving the social media moves here. So, I don't know exactly what the best solution is for addressing the censorship, but primarily is speaking up, having our voice heard, and not just like kowtowing to this. I mean, this is intimidation essentially, and they're trying to intimidate us. They're trying to silence us, and so the more we speak up and push back against this, the less successful they're going to be in doing this.
Yeah. Well, and also it's going to mean eventually we're going to have to go back to actually meeting people in person and getting the word around that way, which is a novel idea. But I think that's why the church is so important because. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. You totally hit it on the head. Is that sort of this closure of the church, or the semi-closure of the church? It came at the worst possible time, because this is the time we need the church.
Yeah.
And the church being closed down, people not meeting, not praying together. Like the church we go to, I'd heard that the online viewership had just plummeted. After a couple of months. So I think that's incredibly important. That was probably one of the biggest mistakes we made, was allowing the church to be shut down largely across the country.
Absolutely. Well, Troy Anderson, thank you so much for coming on the show today. He's the co-author of The Military Guide to Armageddon. Go find it. Is anywhere books are sold, right? Barnes & Noble, Amazon.
Oh yeah, pretty much anywhere.
You can find it all of those places, anywhere you can find it, and it's the #1 bestseller. Is that correct?
Yeah, #1 in eschatology and spiritual warfare, and hit 129 on Amazon last week. So
wow, eschatology and spiritual warfare is 129 on. That's pretty impressive.
It's amazing.
Well, that's amazing, Troy. We appreciate what you're doing, and keep up the good fight. Thank you so much, and we'll have to have you on again sometime.
Yeah, great honor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, and I'm going to bring Justin Barnes back on. Justin, of course, he's my brother. That's why, by the way, for those of you who are wondering, POV with JB, Facebook.com/POV with JB. That stands for Josh Barnes or Justin Barnes, because, our names work that way. Justin, I've got you turned back on. Justin, I want you to just rant for as long. You've got so many things you wanted to say last hour, and I kept going to Juan instead. I've got Juan muted, so that way he can't interrupt you. He's trying to talk right now, and I've got him muted. First, let's talk. First, what did you think about that interview and the essential element that our physical warfare or our physical concerns, right, have spiritual needs and need spiritual preparation in order to act correctly in those times?
I can't really judge per se without knowing the specifics of what's said, but I think that there is definitely at least an element of truth to the fact that everything is a theological and spiritual issue.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. I mean, the Bible does claim, God does claim lordship over every area of your life, so it would make sense that every area of your life is affected by spiritual issues, shall we say. So for example, eating food. Well, does the Bible have any commands about food? Yes, it does. You know, gluttony is a sin, that sort of thing. So in every aspect of your life, there ought to be, at the bare minimum, a spiritual consideration to it. But much beyond that, I'd have to know exactly what is claimed by everything as a spiritual preparation thing. Because I think the danger some people slip into is that everything becomes too spiritualized to where we never get practical with the spiritual. But I don't get the impression that that's what
so let
do.
me give you kind of a little excerpt from the book, because this actually shocked me. I was reading it expecting to pull out a bunch of stuff that I was going to challenge him on. I was probably going to disagree, because he's charismatic. I'm not. I just assumed there were a few things, that I would, things where he said the Lord told me this, and I'm not the type that thinks that
Yeah,
the Lord
that didn't dodge my attention.
But you know what? Ultimately, he gives this whole here's what we're preparing for. Here's what we're preparing for, and he's talking about dark times, even like incursions and civil war and battles. And he's talking about actual like physical things we may be in for in the future. And then he says, here's how we prepare for that, because Christians by and large aren't prepared. And his preparation is all, look, you've got to deal with the flesh. You've got to deal with sin. You've got to make sure that your life is all about the Lord Jesus Christ. And he's giving these spiritual solutions because he's saying if you're going to be prepared for coming like physical problems, you're going to need to be spiritually ready. That's where you start.
Yeah, and that's where I say absolutely. If you want to be able to appropriately respond to the situations that are going to be difficult coming down the road, you are not going to be able to consistently appropriately respond if you have not been there's a lot of ways people want to word it. If you're not walking with God or living right, or I would say living a life submitted to the Lordship of Christ, living a life where your goal every day is that Christ is my Lord. So what does my master, my owner, what does he want me to do?
Right.
If you're not in that preparation, then you will not be prepared to respond. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be the physically, you're always physically going to get everything you want, but as far as doing what the Christian is required to do, that's what you have to have that preparation for, because then you will be ready to respond as God wants, whether or not that plays out exactly how you want it on earth. It's about honoring God first, and then we deal with what's after that.
It's interesting that this conversation has gone this way, because actually today, usually I'll actually plan out the whole show, and today I just said there's just so many things on my mind. I'm just going to let them flow as they come. But one of the things I remember talking to you about, and I remember saying this, I said that when we were on the stairs and there was just this anger that was all around, and I said, I remember saying I was angry enough to do something violent, and I think a lot of Trump supporters were, but I didn't, because I said I don't cross the line. But I said probably if I hadn't spent time reading my Bible this morning, I told you this on Wednesday, I said I probably would have done. I mean, the point I was making is that there's having anger that's actually like justified, but then there's a reason that you don't act on it. There's a reason that you aren't reactionary. You are you actually stop and think through your actions before you do it. And I think, for me at least, on Wednesday, I don't know that I would have actually, I'm not that type of person anyway, but, I think that I wasn't filled with anger or filled with despair because I had met with the Lord that morning, and I had just sort of given all of my anxiety over to Him. And I think that's a big difference between us and the other side. We shouldn't be reactionary. We shouldn't act out of anger. Do we have a right to be angry, right? What we do ought to be carefully considered and what is righteous, right?
Yes. Actually, I do remember that conversation very well. It was actually, I think I had said, right in the morning, first thing we met, it was like, oh man, I feel really down. I said
that was before. That's right. That was before everything happened.
Before everything happened, I said I feel really, really down about this thing, overwhelmed or something like that. In that matter. And you said to me, I would too if it wasn't because I read my Bible this morning.
Yeah.
So
it makes a big difference.
Yes.
What was the question that you had asked Justin that he never answered?
Oh yes. But let me just give you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I want to give you some you and Justin some amazing credit. So we are at different levels in our Christianity, and you know that, I know that. So, and I'm talking personally. One gal here. You said, I remember one time we were in the middle of that. I'm filming and stuff. I turn around and you definitely said, there's a line I'm not going to cross. And you said it to me. I mean, you're looking at my eyes. Said, there's a line I'm not going to cross, or that I wouldn't cross. I don't know. I knew I was not going to hit anybody. Mm-hmm. I knew that. I mean, especially a police officer. I knew. If the line would have broken, the police line, if I'm referring, if they would have just pulled back into the rotunda or something like that, I probably would have gone inside. No doubt about it. Because, I was looking for that, I'm going to say the $1 million shot,
Yeah.
But at the same time, the vibe, for lack of a better word, around it was, it was like we needed to do something.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what it was. It would have been. I completely understand how people got caught up in anger.
Yes.
With this promise that here's an outlet for your anger. Attack those police officers and it will accomplish something. Yeah. Now it's thinking back, it's completely insane.
Again.
But I can see how people got caught up in that.
Yes. Again, I think there's some of the patriots got caught up with that. Some of the people there were there to do that. Let's be clear. That whoever they were, whoever they belong in what group they belong to, they were there to cause trouble. Period. Point that. Yeah. We understand that. And we mentioned the other people that we saw before earlier in the day. There were also people that got caught that had no intentions of doing anything. But just to be there and protest, but I think they got caught into that.
Yeah, which is important to remember. So when you're arguing with somebody on Facebook and you say no Trump supporters were part of this, I can tell you that's not true. There absolutely were a significant number of the people doing violence were Trump supporters, whether they were Proud Boys. Or just Proud Boys in disguise,
or whoever it was.
But there were others that joined with them, even that were not Proud Boys. Most of them were young, teenage, 20-year-old guys, just sort of like just driven by passions. Yes. That sort of age, Yeah.
I mean, classic example of that. And we need to let Justin.
Yeah, Justin's like, I want to answer the question.
Classic example. All of us have seen the video of people staying within the lines in the rotunda. Like they're just looking at, looking around and just admiring the Capitol. Like they've been there for the first time. Like they're doing the tour.
Yeah.
They're not running. They're not yelling. They're just admiring. Those, without a doubt in my mind, those are Trump supporters. And those are Trump supporters that went in way past after all the violence had happened. but the doors were still open. I'm way past. I don't know how long.
There was at least one point where they were actually letting people in.
Yes, exactly. And
I don't know why.
And
But
they're staying within the, what they call those things in English? The little, like
the
like,
ropes. I don't
the
know.
ropes. The ropes. Yeah, they're staying within the ropes, and they're looking around, and they're very. Just like they just pay for the $2 tour, so no doubt about it. Those were Trump supporters. So, the question, Justin, and we got 24 minutes, and they're all yours, man. The question was, we're talking about our founding fathers, basing everything on Christianity, and I said, well, that is the case. We don't do anything but defend ourselves. Why did they give us the Second Amendment? Very clearly, with the intentions of, if we needed to use it against the government, against government tyranny. So it's not just, well, I think I did a better job the last time. But that's what it. Why did they give us the Second Amendment for us as individuals to have guns and to defend ourselves, not only to go hunting, blah blah blah, against other people, but also to use it against a tyrannical government if necessary.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think that the premise of the Second Amendment isn't simply so that you can shoot somebody that invades your home, but also to be a deterrent to a tyrannical government. My response was very brief because it had to be. But what I said is that I don't equate everything that is American or constitutional with everything that is Christian, because yes, it may have been the principle of the founding fathers that they want a check on their government so that it is restrained from being tyrannical. But at the same time, that does not mean that changes what the Bible says about the issue. Christians are supposed to be peaceful people. We are to act in self-defense, yes, but there's never a time where we see any advocating of aggression or violence towards the government. Paul says, as much as is within you to live peaceably with all men. Jesus said, look, if they're going to persecute you in this town, go ahead and kill the governor. No, he said, go to the next town. It's okay to leave persecution, but he wasn't advocating for overthrowing the persecutors. The problem with this is that the job of restraining bad governments is in the hands of other governments.
Yeah.
The job of violence is in the hand of government. God has committed the justified violence that God has committed to the government. That's why the death penalty is biblical. That's why just wars are biblical. But the job of the Christian is to turn the other cheek, is to go 2 miles when he asks for 1. So the Christian's response is to say, I will fulfill what God has said to fulfill and leave the rest in God's hands. I know it sounds like a sort of retreat, a cop-out to say, well, I guess they took the country. But I trust God, and if God said, I'm going to let this nation be judged because of its wickedness, and they took the country, then I say, then I will do what a Christian's supposed to do as God lets them take the country.
Justin, a question for you. So you said, and again, we are, admitting that I'm at a completely different level on my Christianity than you are. And that's why I'm asking these questions. And
yeah, I'm probably like way down here. Compared to where you're at.
The question is, go to the other town, go to the next town. At some point, you're going to run out of towns.
That's a hypothetical that doesn't change the verse, doesn't change what Jesus said. But I would also say that throughout history, God has always had a remnant. And I think in principle, the idea is if you're persecuted here, if you want to deal with the persecution, flee it. That doesn't mean that there's always going to be, hey, the next town over isn't going to persecute us. But I don't have to be out in the marketplace screaming the gospel. Maybe I go to my home church and we meet quietly and privately. And if they're going to persecute us there, then we go find somewhere else to meet, that sort of thing. I think the principle that he's getting across there is, hey, as you're going out for me, when you run into resistance, it is okay to not fight back, but rather just get out. Go to somewhere where you can be safe. But either way, however you want to understand that, he never advocates for them to rise up and overthrow those that are persecuting. And again, we see over and over and over again in the New Testament calls for. I mean, Jesus is getting taken by the Roman government, and Peter draws his sword, slices the guy's ear, and it looks like Peter thinks he's tough enough to take on the whole lot. But Jesus says, "Put your sword up, because those that live by the sword will die by the sword." So I just don't see anywhere where Jesus would indicate for us this alternative that is being suggested. And so taking a sort of holistic view of what we see in the New Testament, I don't see a justification for it, I guess.
Okay. And my next question is, you mentioned turn the other cheek. You only have two cheeks, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure you're, well, technically, yes, you only have two.
Okay, we're not going there.
I'm gonna jump in here.
So technically, so you got two cheeks, right? So, and I'm not sure where I heard this, but I heard it in the past few days, and the premises of the comment was, and here's the thing, I heard it from, I'm pretty sure I heard it from a Christian perspective, which was, you get offended or whatever. You okay? Let's just be more literal. You get punched. You slap in one cheek. You turn the other cheek to see what the intent of the other person actually was. Is that the case, or are we talking about you understand what I'm saying? And I know it's yeah.
So I think what would clear that up is understanding the context in which Jesus is saying that, and this is where I say there is a very big distinction. In that God has charged the government with violence. Because the context of what Jesus is saying there, he's in his sort of, you have heard it said, but I say to you this. He's giving out rules for what it looks like to be a citizen of the kingdom of God. That's sort of his coming out speech that he's giving about, okay, if you want to be my follower, here's what it looks like. And what he does is he draws on the Old Testament. You heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, all that sort of stuff. What is that? That's the Old Testament law. That's the retribution system of the Old Testament law. And Jesus says, but I'm saying to you, as the individual, the follower of Christ, the Christian, the follower, the citizen of the kingdom of God, that if someone strikes you, it's not an eye for an eye. It's turning the other cheek. In other words, you're not returning violence for violence. You're not hating your enemy, you're loving them. You're praying for those that persecute you. So Jesus is saying the individual is not the one who is to get this retribution. The charge for the Christian is that when he is struck, he turns the other cheek. Rather than killing his enemy, he loves him. Rather than loving your friends and hating your enemies, you love your enemies. And it's all about the individual mandate on us and leaving the violence and all of that for what God has, to who God has charged that with, and that would be the government.
Yeah. So what we're doing here, let me sum this up. We are not for violence, and we're not condoning violence, but at the same time, I think it's misguided to say, and I've seen a lot of Christians say this, I condone all violence, all forms of violence at any time, everywhere. And I've seen these all-encompassing statements that are actually not true. I mean, I can give you certain instances where violence is not condemned. I would not condemn violence for self-defense, for example, in a home invasion, right? I would not condemn violence when the military is attacking some other country for the best interest of their national sovereignty, right? I would not condemn violence when it is the death penalty, right? I definitely would be careful with my words enough to say I don't condemn all violence at all times ever anywhere. Because I would have to condemn a lot of the Bible. The Bible actually says that certain violence is okay and is correct. However, when it comes to violence against your government, attacking a government, this must be done only by other governments, right? It is a government versus government thing. It is not a Christians versus the government thing. Is that a pretty good summation here?
And I don't want to give across the notion that I'm against self-defense, because I kind of was running on the assumption we'd already laid out that principle a little bit earlier, that self-defense is biblically justified. But what I'm saying is that the violence that is a grand scale, because we're talking about a grand scale violence when you're acting against a nation, when you're acting against even in retribution, as far as for example, like vigilante justice is not a biblical idea. The idea of, okay, if this person has murdered somebody and the Bible commands that a murderer is put to death, I do not have the God-given authority to go and make sure that is enforced. That is in the hand of the government. So what I'm saying is that God has assigned certain roles for certain levels. The individual has the right to self-defense, but does not have the power of the sword that God gave to the state. And to try to overthrow a government or rise up against it is saying, I'm taking the sword anyway, and God didn't give me that.
Okay.
I thought maybe you wanted to say something.
No,
so
no,
was giving
I
you a
actually
chance.
did.
And by the way,
No, I
think
actually
this is
do.
a great conversation. I'm having fun.
No,
If anyone
I
thinks
actually-
that tensions are high,
Yeah,
it's
no.
not for me.
No, I certainly don't feel any tension.
Oh no, not here. No. So, but this is your last show.
It's not anymore. This last half hour
Well,
hasn't
I
been
saw
mine
that
at all.
coming.
It's been you two. I mean,
Well, that's why I say this is your last show. And now it's going
oh,
to
this
be.
is my. Oh, I thought you said this is my live show.
No, your last.
Oh, my last show. Thanks a
my
lot,
last-
Justin.
Yeah, from-
you,
thought that.
you
I
know
was
who
like, well,
funds
it's been
point of
fun.
view, right? It's Juan Gown. Nice job.
Just to tell your listeners, next week.
POV with JB and JG.
JG. There
Going
you
to
go.
be POV with JG going forward.
There's
So
going to be a lot less facial hair on the show next week. Put it that way.
exactly. Yes, but here's where I got to ask the following questions. Throughout history, world history, many people have risen against their government for good cause. So you're telling me then that was wrong.
I would have to get into more specific examples to really be able to make a declarative statement on that one way or the other.
Okay.
Because as we've established, as Josh said, like when you have government rise against government, like the founding fathers didn't just say, all right, we're going against the government. They formed a government and said, we are now a government separate from this government. And now this government, this governing body, is acting against another governing body that is trying to act in a tyrannical way. I used to say that I didn't see that as biblical, but I'm actually, the more I think it through, I think that is following a biblical pattern of we have an established government, and that government has the right of the sword. So I think that is actually justified. Though I still have some questions about it, but for the most part, I have to say I guess that is justified. But it would depend on what particular example we're talking about.
Okay. Let's start with Nicaragua in the 1990s. You can follow also by Haiti in the 1980s, where the people rise against dictators and threw them out.
I'm going to have to defer to you on the specifics of this. These are not situations that part of my history knowledge is not very
I know.
good, so you'll have to fill me in.
Oh, you guys are way too young. You were probably not even born yet, right?
Is Nicaragua? Is that a place?
Oh my God.
I think that's what they put in cigarettes, right? Is
Yeah, I thought that was
Nicaragua?
Nick.
That's
No,
funny.
that's the gum. That's the gum that gets you
Oh,
over
that's
the
the gum that gets you off the Nicaragua.
Yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
no. You have nicotine in cigarette, and then you chew the Nicaragua
Oh,
gum.
the Nicaragua gets rid of the nicotine. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Any credibility you guys had has been gone out the window.
Well, thankfully it wasn't all that.
so
high on
much,
the list
actually,
anyway.
so much for homeschooling. I thought they taught you all this stuff. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have the same homeschool teacher or anything.
Oh my goodness.
This is quality entertainment, people. This is why you listen to Point of View, because honestly, if your 2021 didn't get a little bit better this Monday, it's because you didn't listen to Point of View. I'm just telling you, it's because you didn't listen to Point of View. This has been a great show, and I think that one of the things that's just been really encouraging to me over the last week, because honestly, there's a lot to be discouraged about, but I've purposely decided to take a step back, right, and to look at the big view, because this is one thing I appreciate about this book, because it takes the large view, right? Look at it down the road. Down the road, we know eventually things get worse. This is what the Bible tells us. But in the end, Jesus wins. And this life is only temporary. We are so blessed to have the freedom we still have. And we are so much better off than almost every other Christian at living at any other time throughout history. And we just have to, when we take a step back and see that and say, yeah, maybe America's not going to be free anymore, but man, how thankful we are for how long we've had freedom and how much freedom we still have. And maybe there is some hope. Like, there is that hope that maybe these state legislatures over the next couple of years will actually enact, because they're Republican led now, maybe some different election laws will be passed. Maybe this mail-in voting thing will be dealt with. Maybe there is a chance for free and fair elections in the future. Maybe this isn't, maybe, just maybe, this isn't over.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
If I may, I want to just really quick address the particular situation. Just going off the principles you lay out, is there's tyrannical government, the people uprise and overthrow the tyrants that were sitting. Is that basically the gist of what you were?
That is
you were
correct.
saying?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. There's no government except for the government, but the
Right,
people
so-
rise and have thrown government out.
I would say there is some justified violence there in self-defense. If the government is taking violent action against you, against your family, against your neighbor, loving your neighbor, means being jealous for their rights and defending them, that sort of thing. If there is something happening, I think a self-defense violence, again, is something that God has given as a right to the individual. But then turning it around and saying, all right, now, boys, let's go on offense, that's where I say we cross the line. I think the removing of those tyrants ought to be done either by God directly or by a foreign government stepping in to defend the innocent.
That's a really good answer. I really.
But I will say, I believe God can bring good out of bad or imperfect actions. So I don't have a problem with saying, hey, God might have used this in a very good way in world history, but that doesn't mean, therefore, everything is justified that happened.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you love America, it doesn't mean that you can't say that the American founding was based on something that was immoral, even though I don't think it was, right? But those who think it was, that it was inappropriate to rise against the British, can still appreciate and love America, right?
Right.
But I don't think it was.
Yeah.
Personally.
And by the way, again, I used to be on the other side of the American thing, saying it was immoral, but though I do have some hesitation on it, I think it was justified because they went about it the proper way in establishing a government so that the people weren't rebelling against authority. Because this is one of the things with this is there is a tendency in human beings to want to kick against the authority, and God has ordained government as authority. You ought to be under governmental authority. That is a good thing. We all have certain authorities in our lives that we are supposed to be under, and kicking against a government and saying, we're not under your authority anymore, we're not under any government now, we're just going to fight. That is, I think, dangerously out of the God-ordained plan for how things should go.
Now, I wanted to get to, in the last few minutes, Juan, I wanted to talk about ways that people can get in touch and watch and be a part of Red America if things go south on Facebook. And so we're going to talk about some other platforms here in a minute. But you looked like you had something to say, so I wanted to let you get that in real quick before we do that. We've got about 5 minutes left in the show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you guys. You know how much I care about you guys and how much I I respect you.
Hey, we get to keep the show.
And, no, I didn't say that.
You didn't say that.
This is your farewell speech. So, but I gotta let you know that you know what, I understand what you just said there, and Justin, and it was a good answer. Did I like the answer? No, I don't. I don't like the answer, but then again, like I said, we're in different levels of our journey in Christianity here. But I also have to let you know that you know what, Reverend Oliver fought in the Revolutionary War, you know, and he was in the movie The Patriots, man, The Patriot. So
Yeah, he's
I think I gotta be right, not you. Okay,
he told me this earlier, and I said, you do realize that he died, right? That this movie does not look well on him.
Well, I also said, you know, hey, you are my Reverend Oliver. You know, I just found out what the name.
He gets
you
to,
are, but
he gets to be the Mel Gibson.
I am
character
Mel Gibson's
in
character
this,
on this war. So, okay, real quick, how to find Right America Media? If everything goes south, guys, the most important place to go is rightamericamedia.com. That's not going to be shut down. We also have YouTube. We're going to have a meeting, and we're going to try to establish a presence in MeWe and Gab. And all those alternate ones. It is hard right now to get into Gab because everybody's trying to get into Gab since Parler is down. But the most important place to go, you still can see us, by the way. You still can see us in Right America Media Facebook and Right America Media YouTube as well. But if everything goes south, rightamericamedia.com, or actually, and I keep forgetting this one, which is ramtv.live, ramtv.live. Takes you to the same place, but in different different directions.
By Dodge.
Yeah, you know, and this rightamericamedia.com is actually, you would be surprised because this is just you know, put together by nobody here is paid. You know, this is all amateur stuff, but it's very professionally done on rightamericamedia.com. You actually have every show that when it's live is on that homepage. We have some shows that are live at the same time as other shows, and you get to pick which one you want to watch. They're both up there. We have Sunday services up.
Yes.
On there if you were looking for something on Sunday, and then everything that goes live. You got the daily review with Keith Hansen.
Exactly.
You've got Josh Moore, I think, is on pause right now. He'll probably have a show again soon.
Yeah, yes. He's moving to Texas. He just got to Texas, so he's trying to set everything up, and that's how he's going to start.
You got the Savvy Truth.
Yes.
You've got the Council of Colonels.
You have My Two Cents with Keith Hansen.
My Two Cents?
With Keith Sanders. Keith Sanders, My Two Cents on Thursday night. So right now we have 5 shows going on every week. More to come, negotiating with all the people that want to have their shows in.
Yeah, and you can also see all of the archived shows. Like you can actually see a list of all the shows that we've done in the past. So you want to say, oh, what was that? What was that book that they were talking about? What was that thing? Or you want to say, oh, wow, I thought that was a really great show. I want someone else to hear it. You know, you can go back, find it there. So look, guys, I really want to encourage everyone who watches on Right America, on Facebook.com/Right America Media Network, to start getting into the habit of watching on rightamericamedia.com, because it could be,
and sign up as a member. It's all free.
You can comment on there.
Yes.
You can have interactions with other people on there. We're trying to create a platform where you can run to and still get all the same content without having all the censorship. And it may well be that we're completely censored before too long. But yeah, check it out, rightamericamedia.com, rightamericamedia.com, and
or ramtv.live.
Or ramtv.live. And that's it. We're wrapping it up. I've got to watch the clock really carefully because we don't have a little jingle that jingles us out. But that's it. That's the end of time. And we will see you next time here on Point of View.
Listen, watch, and stream at WSMN.live.